In the constantly changing world of fundability, the big question is this: how are entrepreneurs and real estate investors like us, ones who want to grow our businesses and who are tired of paying for really expensive alternative lending, how do we tap into the most inexpensive money available and do it without the hassle of typical borrowing? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Welcome to the Get Fundable podcast with your host, Merrill Chandler.
Welcome. Merrill Chandler here, your host of the Get Fundable podcast and your guide to the Get Fundable universe. In this episode, guys, I got to tell you, we're going to go on a little bit of an emotional, personal journey over some goals I set, some failures that I had, some things I learned, and probably most importantly, how you and I can both get better at keeping our promises and being true to our word, and what that means for us, including how that leaks into our fundability. When we come back, we'll get right to it. And welcome back. So as I promised, this episode is a little near and dear to my heart because it shows poor planning on my part, an epic fail, and marginal small successes that all ended up benefiting my life in a huge way. So where do I begin? Well, like the title says, right, how I accidentally sabotage myself in a big way. So give you some backstory. Back in June, so 3 months ago, I'm part of Multiple Club. I've shared with you, Multiple Club is beyond a mastermind. It actually preps CEOs of companies to prepare their organizations to scale, right? All the tools necessary to scale. Well, I've loved it. I've been there almost a year now, and I am absolutely loving my experience. But I was also, at the time, I was the heaviest guy in the entire Multiple Club. And by heaviest, I mean like I had 40 pounds above my optimal weight. And that was 20 pounds above anybody else's above their optimal weight. These guys were all older 20s, 30s, some young 40 somethings. These are all these are all alpha men and women who are CEOs of their organizations, and they're all shaping their companies in order to scale. So I'm in a very distinguished crowd of people who are, and so again, to share a little bit of the philosophy of Multiple Club, they have a formula that's called IV equals EV. Interpersonal value, meaning the value that I am for myself and my network and who I am and how I show up in the world, equals my enterprise value. The value of my company is actually going to be in the future. So IV equals EV. So one of the sets of goals, we work the core four, and the core four is body, being, balance, and business. And we have daily routines that have us engage in all of these areas. The one that I was most significantly lacking in was body. And I've been doing this since last November, and marginal weight loss and marginal improvement in my physical conditioning, etc. But it was mediocre at best. And in Q2, in June, Nick Alfano, beautiful soul, and one of the men who is not letting me get away with anything, he calls me up to the front in his presentation. He calls me up to the front of the room to be kind of the poster child of an example of how to set goals, pick your end game, and work it backwards. I didn't know this was coming, but I'm always up for a challenge. So he calls me up and he says, Merrill, you are the heaviest person. So I'm like, if it wasn't Multiple Club, it would be fat shaming, right? But we're all about leveling up, about improving. And so he goes, you have been working now for 6 months at trying to improve your situation. And I got to tell you, bro, it's not happening. It's not working. And so I confessed, yep, lack of discipline. I'm a foodie. And I had poor habits for 4 years. Since 2017, I have been way before COVID. I wish I could make it excuse about COVID, but I put on my first 15 of the 40 pounds way before COVID started, and I put on the next 25 for a total of 40. Now, let me kind of illustrate how horrible this is. For any of you who are in my condition, 40 pounds is one of those 5-gallon jugs of water that you put on the water cooler, right? Have you lifted one of those? I mean, I'm lifting that thing and I'm going, this is how much unnecessary weight, extra weight I am carrying around. 40 pounds, and I'm lifting it up and I'm hauling it into my kitchen to put it on the water dispenser. No bueno, not okay. And so they said, Merrill, if you've not had enough, we've had enough. We want you to have a goal. And you're going to keep this goal and you're going to tell us, and we're going to work it out right now. So I said, I can commit to you in 90 days that I will be 30 pounds lower. Now, not the full, my ideal weight is 200. I committed to going to 215. I was at 245 to 250 for 2 years, and 20 pounds overweight for 2 years before that. So I said, in 90 days, I'm going to drop, and Juliana is joining us. So hi, Juliana. Yeah, Merrill's bearing his soul again, but there is a very powerful reason for me sharing this as part of this podcast. So I committed to dropping 30 pounds in 90 days by the end of September. Now, we're shooting this right now. It is September 27th. Thursday is my goal date. Now, I had never lost anything more than 10 pounds before in my life, ever, right? And before 2017, I'd never needed to lose weight. I've been 200 pounds since high school. I always took great pride in my physique and everything. And like many of us, the shit show of a horrible relationship, and the wheels fell off of my personal life, and I just processed all of that through food for 2 years and gained the appropriate weight that goes with that experience. And I know I'm not alone in this, right? I was eating my feelings like it was a banquet. So they called me out, they challenged me, and they said, so to lose 30 pounds in the next 3 months, that means 10 pounds a month. That means basically 1.75 pounds a week on average. Now, they did all the math. They said a pound of fat is 4,000 and change calories. And so your current BMI, your body metabolism rate, or BMR, is 1,700 calories. So you have to be at a deficit of like of almost 1,000 calories, 750 to 1,000 calories a day. I have to be under, right? Whew. So that means at the same time, they said, so what is going to be your physical goal to make sure that you're burning calories above and beyond that? Well, I've always wanted to do a 5K. And so, and this is going to be very meaningful in a moment, I said, so I want to do a 5K. I'm going to train to do a 5K by September 30th. Now, that's in 3 days. I want to be able to do a 5K. Then, without ever having done a 5K, which is 3.1 miles, without ever having run a 5K, 3 miles, since I was in 8th grade on the cross country team, I'd never run 3 miles ever since that time. And I said, because a couple of guys had told me, yeah, they do 8-minute miles. I go, then I'll give myself some room. I am going to do this in 10-minute miles. So 30 minutes, 3.1 miles, right? So there's a lot to learn from my foolishness. First of all, I am on track to hit my goal for my weight. But I could have hit that weight goal without my sabotage. I could have hit that weight goal 2 or 3 weeks ago. But I noticed how much time I had. I noticed the direction I was going, what my trajectory was. And I said, I can cheat, not a little bit, but like take an entire weekend of just decadence. I mean, just foolishness in eating, because I knew I could do it by the rather than getting ahead of the game, because before the end of the year, I'm also going to be at 200. And I'll tell you that right now, I'm not done, but the first milestone was hitting this 215, 30 pounds down in 90 days. Well, I just played with my own psyche over and over, manipulating all this. And because I didn't know what a 10-minute mile was, I've gotten down to a 10-minute, 30-second mile on the first mile, and then a 14-minute mile on the second mile, and like a 16 or 17-minute on the third mile. So my timing just continues to just plummet, because sprinting the first mile just completely killed me. Well, here's the point of all of this. This last week, I was down at Multiple Club because we had our Q4 meeting, and I got up in front of everybody and confessed that I was on track for my weight goal, but that I had effed around on it and I could have been further, but I just wanted to keep the goal, right? Have you ever done that where you're like, oh, I can skate because I can keep my goal, rather than the intention of the goal is to be healthy, move forward, and ultimately for me get to 200, but I'm just wasting time and eating unnecessarily and just going off the rails probably 3 times, probably once a month. And not that it's bad, it's just I didn't need to. It wasn't it just was sabotage. For whatever reason. Well, I stand in front of them, and here's my point. If you have not heard me say it before, I will say it now, and I encourage you, write this down, make notes, live from this place. Keep your word or renegotiate your commitment. Keep your word or renegotiate your word. Both are acceptable. And I've shared this before, but I want to make sure everybody is on board here, because I stood in front of my peers and said, on average, I have not been below 36 minutes. And coming this week, I do not believe in all good faith that I'm going to keep my commitment that I promised you to do a 5K in 30 minutes. I do not believe I'm going to be able to do that. The best time I've done is 36, but I can't guarantee that I'll do that. I know I can be under 38 minutes. And so will you accept a renegotiation of my commitment that I will do it in under 38 minutes, but I will do my very, very best, because I know that I have done lower than 38 before. Unanimously, they all raised their hand up, and some of them clapped, and they allowed me to renegotiate my commitment. So I can keep my word, but stay conscious, not just blow it off, but renegotiate so that I'm within my integrity. Now, let's define some terms here. Honesty is when you speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Okay? That accounts for withholds as well. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Integrity is when you do what you say you're going to do. Doing what you say you're going to do. That means keeping your word or renegotiate your agreement so that you can keep your word and you can be in your integrity. So I knew enough to do that. I knew enough to renegotiate. But what I'm challenging each one of you is that how many times do we say something, we make a promise, and then we just blow it off. We go unconscious. We're so used to not keeping our word that it's become, if not a joke, then at least irrelevant or unimportant to us. So how do we, and this was a big deal to me, because I had a couple of people come up to me after on the next break at MC, and they're like, I really like what you did. And I shared with them that I recommitted to them, but a new commitment. And I asked their permission as a group that it was okay with them that I did so. And if I come to them on my heart, which I was, because I was not going to hit 100, and I'm with tear-filled eyes said, I have never done a 5K since I foolishly just blurted it out, thinking that if I could do 1 mile at 10 seconds, I could do all 3 miles at 10 seconds. That was not the case, not even close. So it was I didn't set a conscious, attainable goal. I just put something out there. So that was my first, if not an error, that was my first place where I went unconscious. I did not clearly think. I didn't go do a mile. Now, if I would have done the first mile and I would come in at 13 minutes, I'd be like, how am I going to do this in less than 39 minutes, right? So I was unconscious when I was setting that goal. And that's one of the things that I want us to, as part of this podcast, I want us to be clear, is that we've got to set attainable goals. All right. Because I'd never run one. And so I didn't know what was true for me, or even what was remotely close to me. And it doesn't seem like a big deal, 38 minutes to 30 minutes, 8 minutes, but that's 2.5 minutes per mile. That is, and it's sprinting the entire 3.1 miles, right? So here's the problem. Because keeping our word, we don't take it seriously and we go unconscious. Too many times, you guys, we start not trusting ourselves. And we start having those conversations in our hearts and our minds that are like, I put something out there, but I know full well that I'm going to not care about it at some point. I'm going to bail on it because we don't trust ourselves. And yet, in our relationships, in our business partnerships, in our banking relationships, I'm going to keep my word to you. And if we don't, we get harmed on our personal profile, our business profile. But in our relationships, if we say we're going to do something and then we tell a story or have an excuse instead of keep our word or renegotiate our commitment, all of a sudden we're untrustworthy and we wonder why people don't trust us. When we don't even trust ourselves, you guys. We don't trust ourselves because we've made a habit of speaking our word. I'm going to do this. And then we don't. And then we get angry when someone doesn't trust us. That's a double standard, guys. That's a huge double standard. And it's not okay. Not one bit. So we see ourselves as unreliable. And if we see ourselves as unreliable, then others are going to see us as unreliable. And now we don't get to play the game of life, the game of funding, the game of relationship at the highest level. And guys, what does that feel like? I know what it feels like for me. It's not okay. So what do we do about it? Well, first of all, we have to get conscious. Don't give your word if you're not going to keep the commitment or renegotiate the commitment. Don't give it. Just stop. I will do my very best. Say those words. Let those words become your very best friend. I will do my very best. But do not say, I will have it ready Monday. Don't say it. You've got to learn. You've got to look into yourself. like I had to with when I stood in front of all of my peers, all these youngsters. I'm freaking 60 years old and I'm holding myself to their speeds. That was foolish in the first part. But I had to come back to them with my hat in hand, humbly asking for them to renegotiate this commitment with me. You get to do the same thing. You get to be conscious. Is this goal attainable? And then either keep your word or renegotiate the terms of your agreement. Both are acceptable. And ask any person on my team. I have numerous times, but you have to do it before it's due. You can't say, yeah, I want this done by 3 p.m. on Friday. And then at 3 p.m. on Friday, like, hey, can I get, I'm not going to be able to keep this commitment. You need to do it before it's due. Show respect to, and teach the people that you love, work with, admire, or who you hope that they admire you. Teach them that you are conscious, that you're committed to giving them what they asked for or what they need with as much clarity on your part as possible. And if you can't do it, then before that due date, due time, due moment, make sure that you renegotiate. Now, how do we fix this? Well, get conscious. Step number 2, though, is start with making smaller promises. Start with making smaller promises to yourself. What this does is it allows us to win. Somebody asked me once upon a time, why are some people just like so confident and so out there? So many times people call them alpha. I call the folks that were all my brothers and sisters in Multiple Club. They're all alphas, right? What makes them an alpha? What makes any one of us an alpha is confidence. But how does confidence come together? Well, let's go back to my little formula that I've shared half a dozen times in these podcasts. Practice creates competence, creates confidence. And then after it comes mastery and freedom. Practice creates competence. And then that's where we get our confidence. So folks who've been in sports, folks who have gotten smaller wins, got used to the feeling, they became competent at whatever it was they were doing. Juggling, playing school sports, writing, whatever it was, they practiced such that they become competent in whatever it is that they're doing. And that competence creates wins. And when you win, you start feeling confident. So start by making small wins, small practice, keeping your word. Practice keeping your word, guys. And then once you have some practice and a little bit of confidence, then expand your word. There is no harm for the next year saying, I will do my best. But make small promises, keep those small promises, and then take the win. Acknowledge yourself. One of the things that Sky is my producer and content manager. And so she asks me about whatever my PT was that day. When she comes into the office, she's like, so how'd it go today? And I'm like, yeah, I hit this new time. And then I roll right through it. I blow by it. I don't take the win. And I know some of you out there are similar. It's like she was saying, Merrill, you take this, it's like 15 pounds and 5K in 30 minutes is the only goal. You're not taking smaller intermediate wins. And it's really true. That was a wake-up call for me. Is that I don't take the smaller wins like, oh yeah, I hit 220. I got 5 more pounds, and I just blow off that win. So keep the smaller promises, make smaller commitments, keep those promises, and then take the win. Consciously celebrate. That's what I'm working on. Now, I want to share I don't know how recently you've heard this, but this is what I believe fully in what And what Johann, his name is Johann Wolfgang Goethe. That's I even listened to the pronunciation of his name, but it's Goethe, Goethe. And he said, until one is committed, there is always hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiation and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. Providence is the 17th, 18th century version of what we call the universe or God. The moment one definitely commits oneself, then the universe, God, providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. Repeated that. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising to one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance, which no one could have dreamed would have come their way. Whatever you can do or dream, you can begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Commitment, when you commit, then that sets in motion. That's like imagine just making a stand and just putting down your commitment firmly into your space, and it'll just reverberate and change things in your outer world that will be to your benefit to make this commitment come to pass. So start small, keep small commitments, practice until you become competent at keeping these commitments, and then begin to trust yourself. I put accidentally in quotes because it's totally tongue in cheek. I have failed at some of my goals and some of my commitments because I have sabotaged myself, because like many of you, I don't know how to take the wins. I don't deserve the win. I am looking for an excuse to be right, that I am a failure or that I'm willing to fail. And if that's not you, God bless, Godspeed. But I'm telling you, for many of us, we don't feel worthy of the win. And so we push away the promise, the commitment, and we break our word and we become slovenly. That's a big word for, we become just, I guess slovenly is the word because that's why the word was invented. We just become lackadaisical and care less about our truth and what we're willing to say and what we're willing to mean, especially when we make promises to others. So do your best. This is a journey for me. I'll keep you updated. You will hear another podcast around the end of the year when I hit my 200 pounds mark. And I've done really, really well. And I am taking these wins. I'm committed to doing more, better, faster, but I'm being gentle with myself. And I encourage you to be gentle with yourself as well. Make small promises. I'm going shopping after work today. Then go shopping after work today. And then acknowledge that you kept a promise. Say it out loud. Be vocal about it. I kept my promise to go shopping. This is awesome. Reinforce it and move on to the next one. This is Merrill Chandler, your guide to the Get Fundable universe. Your word is powerful, especially when it comes to building relationships with banks, your business partners, etc. This isn't just a personal matter. How you treat your word, the promises that you keep to your lenders will determine how much they want to work with you. So I challenge you. This affects all areas of our life. So if you're listening on the podcast, please subscribe so you can get the latest, the greatest. Rate and review. Tell us what you're thinking, yet share it with your friends. And we're recording this live to our Get Fundable Facebook page. So be sure to follow us on Get Fundable so you can see when the live episodes start up, right? We drop it into the podcast, but we want live feedback. And I appreciate those of you who have been here. Thanks for joining us. And more importantly, for those of you who are listening on Facebook, please like this. If there's somebody if this speaks to you, please share it with your tribes, your groups, your pages, your friends, your family, and somebody who might need just a positive reinforcement that you don't have to go from 0 to flawless execution of your word overnight. Let them know that there is a way that we can all win together. I love you guys. I'll see you next week on next week's episode. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Get Fundable podcast. Please leave comments because Merrill would love to read about your aha moments from this episode. And be sure to visit getfundable.com to read our blog, get important links, join our community, and much, much more, like ordering Merrill's tell-all book that is changing the world, The New F Word. And you got to tell your friends about this podcast because we want them to get fundable too.